Hello, so I'm just gonna do a video like I did before for the conscience essay, but instead this one's for the natural law essay. And I'm basically gonna read out what I've got so far and then listen to it back so that I've got, I don't know, I guess I feel like listening to my voice back sometimes actually helps me revise because it's like, it's almost like listening to what I've said from an external source, so I'm able to like evaluate it more and say, okay, is this right? And then yeah, so I just think it'll make things make sense to me. It's not finished what I've got, and I feel like some of it's probably wrong, but yeah, so, okay. The question is, to what extent does natural law provide us with a helpful method of moral decision making? Okay, I'll just start. Natural law is a religious ethical theory which attempts to explain morality. It is one of the four tiers of law: eternal law, divine law, natural law, and human law. The eternal law is what God determined to be good, and natural law is our means of accessing the eternal law. We use right reason and natural inclinations in order to be able to work out morality, what is good for humans. For this reason, natural law is positively comparable to Moore's intuitionism and Aquinas' synderesis. The latter is not surprising, seeing as though Aquinas was a predominant thinker on natural law. He derived his theory from Aristotle's thinking on telos, purpose, and reason, which we use to reach a state of eudaimonia, which means human flourishing. This is the ultimate good. Yeah, so in the introduction, I feel like I could perhaps elaborate a little bit on how it's linked to Moore's intuitionism, but I don't think I've got enough words to do so. However, I think that could lose me marks for perhaps not saying what it means, but then again, yeah, I don't know. Basically, it's linked to Moore's intuitionism because we have a general knowledge of what is good, and so we're able to work towards it, but we can't necessarily pinpoint it, because if we just knew what was good, then we'd do what was good all the time. But Aquinas recognises that we don't do what is good all the time. We sometimes get morality and reason wrong, so yeah. So that's why it's like intuitionism. We have a feeling towards what is good, but we don't necessarily know exactly what it is. Okay, paragraph 1. Although natural law is typically a religious theory, it can be used in a secular way due to the approaches Aristotle and Aquinas take to it. This makes natural law more helpful than divine command theory at working out morality, because it doesn't make us rely on a direct message from God. For example, an atheist is more likely going to reject the Ten Commandments because they reject the whole premise of God. However, they may be more accepting of natural law because it is a reason and instinctual based process. Atheists may reject the label of natural law due to the religious connotations, but they seem to accept the fact that there are certain moral guidelines that we have to abide by in order to make society function properly. So although they reject the label, they accept the concept which the label encapsulates, which is essentially what the label is. For example, I could say that I'm not a vegan, but at the same time not consume meat, dairy or eggs. I reject the label but embody the lifestyle, or embody what the label encompasses. From this logic, we can derive that natural law is a helpful method of moral decision making because it is pragmatic due to its perhaps universal nature. We all have the ability to reason and we all have instincts, therefore we can utilise natural law. Okay, so that's my first paragraph. I feel like it's okay because I've linked back to the question, so yeah, and I haven't gone too off topic. Yeah. However, similar to synderesis, Aquinas assumes that people want to be good and do good, and that we have a natural inclination to follow the synderesis rule: do good and avoid evil. This perhaps doesn't seem to be the case. It is apparent that when given the opportunity, people do evil things. For example, artist Marina Abramovic allowed the public to do whatever they want to her body over a period of 6 hours. She was both physically and sexually harassed over that time and lost her dignity. This is what can happen when we take away the rules. Natural law in and of itself relies on the individual to make their own moral decisions without the influence of external governance. Based on instances like this, we can see that people clearly need some sort of written legislation in order to keep themselves in check. So perhaps natural law alone is not such a helpful method of moral decision making. We also need legal incentives in order to govern our decision making. Perhaps natural law is a good moral theory for theistic individuals because they believe their actions are going to be governed by God, capital letter, by God on the Day of Judgment. So this is an incentive to abide by natural law by doing good and avoiding evil. However, contrary to my claim about natural law being atheistically applicable, perhaps it is not so much. As people, we need something above us to govern our behaviour. Without the human law in place, atheists especially wouldn't have an incentive to behave morally, so natural law alone is not a helpful method of moral decision making. We can't simply trust people to be left to their own devices. That's speculative, but I don't know, I guess it's a good argument. Aquinas claimed there shouldn't be contradiction between the natural law and the human law, which for the most part is perhaps the case. However, there are examples such as Chinese laws which allow for poor working conditions and extremely low wages. Surely this is not a good law. Perhaps the natural law should be used to determine human law in all cases, and then the human law be used to govern our behaviour. In this case, rather than relying solely upon our own judgments to make the right moral decisions, we use the human law, which is reflective of the natural law. So the natural law is helpful for making moral decisions, but not as a direct means of doing so. If it is the natural law which governs human law, then it is arguably a helpful method of moral decision making, just not as a direct method in and of itself. The human law is also necessary for governing our behaviours, but if human law is directly reflective of natural law, then it is a helpful method of moral decision making. And that's all I've wrote so far. I feel like that last bit is, the last 4 sentences is basically just me making the same point, but or just reiterating what I've already said, but you know, that should be okay. Yeah, I'm only 7 minutes in. Okay, so I've wrote 823 words and the word limit is 950, and I sort of want to write something about Kant. I say perhaps natural law is a little bit ambiguous in that it's down to human interpretation. Perhaps we reason differently and reason isn't so universal. But then again, Kant's categorical imperative and things like that are based on reason. Kant thinks that if you use reason, you will get to you will get to the same conclusion as everybody else. But it's like Kant's absolutist, so he says something and it's like, okay, this is absolute. But Aquinas doesn't necessarily do that. He sort of focuses on just using reason in order to be able to work out what is good, and he assumes an intrinsic good. But I guess he is really comparable to Kant, to be honest. They're both almost thinking along the same lines, except I don't know, Kant seems to write rules about it, but then again, I guess you could compare Kant to divine command theory, where we use our reason to work out certain absolutes about the universe, certain things that we should do, and that's what Aquinas says as well. But he doesn't say what is absolutely good, apart from in his primary precepts he does that. So I don't know, I feel like I'm just gonna have to like wing this last little bit a little bit, but I'll try and include some things about Immanuel Kant, and yeah, just some comparisons. I'll say, well, is natural law better than Kantian ethics at making moral decisions, or are they on the same level? Do they both point towards the same sort of ideas? I don't know, because the question at the end of the day is, to what extent does natural law provide us with a helpful method of moral decision making? So I think the best way to be able to answer that is to actually compare it with other ethical theories and see how they weigh up in comparison. Yeah, and I feel like I've done that okay so far, but I've only really compared it to the human law, and I've said that they're pretty much the same thing, or at least they should be the same thing. However, the human law has there's actually a power there to be able to almost control us physically, whereas the natural law is pretty much, we're reliant on the human law as well. We can't just have the natural law because people do bad things, and we sort of need the human law there as a deterrence for the people who aren't religious and who don't feel like they're going to be judged by a god. And I'm not saying that all atheists do a bad thing. I'm just saying that because I'm pretty sure Christians do bad things too, but Christians actually have an incentive to be good and do good. So yeah. Atheists have that too, but what would the world be like if we didn't have the human law and we just had the natural law? Like, if we didn't have a written legislation in order to govern our behaviours? I can't imagine it being an ordered place. And not that it is an ordered place now, but the fact that we actually have some sort of deterrence in place or some sort of punishment in place in order to punish behaviour that we don't want to see in our society, I'd imagine that it's actually reduced crime greatly. And we don't have anything to compare that to. We don't have a world where there is no laws, or perhaps we do, but it's abroad. Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, maybe in Africa it's like, I don't know, I don't want to talk about places like that because I'm not very geographically inclined. Like, I don't know what goes on in other parts of the world, so I don't want to make assumptions, but I'd assume if we didn't have laws or rules, society would just crumble, people would just commit crimes, and the thing is, there won't even be crimes because there's no rule to state that it's wrong in the first place, and we wouldn't get socialised into thinking it was wrong. We would just, I don't know, I think rules are inevitable. Even when we just first started evolving and becoming quite intelligent, when we were able to impose order, I feel like we used rules to just sort out our tribes. Even if it wasn't a gigantic legal system, we had rules. I'm pretty sure there was punishments, and that was just to maintain the social order. It's a product of evolution. If we just took away all the rules, absolute anarchy would break out. So yeah, so linking this back to natural law very quickly because my video is going to cut out. Natural law isn't necessarily a helpful way of making moral decisions in and of itself, but alongside the human law it is, and that's assuming that the natural law is governing the human law. Like, we just can't be left to our own devices because, yeah, we just, as I've explained with the artists and just people doing bad things. So yeah, okay, thank you for watching.